We live in a world that is hell-bent on fitting us into boxes. Oh, you can't be this if you're that. And the boxing rules are theirs too. They will ask you to stick to one box at a time. We also live in a country that is hell-bent on telling us that you have to be a certain way in order to be a certain thing. For instance, a stereotypical engineer should not have too many girlfriends. Because if he has a lot of girlfriends, how will he become an engineer? In the same way, a stereotypical actor will have no brains. Because obviously, if you had brains, you would not choose to become an actor. In the same way, a stereotypical writer should not worry about how he or she looks. Because come on, you're an artist. You should not be worried about the way you look. You should be carefree. Similarly, a good mom is not supposed to have a life beyond her kids. Because how can she be a good mom if she thinks beyond the periphery of the children? We live in a society where you just have to be a certain way, as I said, to be a certain thing. And it starts right away from our childhood. The first question I remember being asked when I was growing up, and raise your hand if you did too, was, "Aap bade hokar kya banna chahte ho?" Wow, lots of hands, right? To translate it into English, what do you want to be when you grow up? What? What do you want to be when you grow up? We do not ask our children who they want to be when they grow up. And I think the who is more important. Do you want to become a kind and a compassionate human being who may not know geometry, who may not know how obtuse and acute angles work, but a child who grows up into a human being and knows that when we all run in a parallel line to each other, then we may never ever meet? I think it is very important to raise a generation of kids who are not obsessed with what they want to become, but a generation of kids who want to think about who they want to be when they grow up. And of course, what you want to be will depend on who you are, rather than it being vice versa. We often let it dictate who we are, rather than letting who we are dictate what we become. And just like all of you, I too was obsessed with what I wanted to be. It was such an obsession. I had no idea, right? So I grew up struggling about what do I want to be? Priya, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the only way to answer this question was by doing a variety of things in my life. I'm 30 years old. And in the last 30 years, I think I've done almost 30 odd jobs or chosen 30 professions to be in, only to find out that doing a variety of things is what makes me who I am. Now when somebody asks me, "Priya, what do you want to do?" and I'm sure you heard that in my introduction as well, it takes me a minute and a half to explain what I do for a living or how I pay my bills. And believe me, I'm not looking forward to the day when it takes me a second to answer it, or where it is just a one-word answer. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself, about how it all began. And before I tell you that story, there's the disclaimer. My story is not some magnanimous narration of victory over evil. There is no hero, no heroine, no villain. It doesn't have a happy, melodramatic, or a sad ending. It is just a story in progress, and a very average story. I come from a normal middle-class family in Dehradun. Yes, the accent is fake. Let's get that out of the way. So I come from a normal middle-class family in Dehradun, a family with very middle-class aspirations. And there's one thing very special about middle-class aspirations. Our aspirations are not in the middle. They're always up there, high. My dad wanted me to become an engineer because he wanted to, but he could not. My mum wanted me to become a doctor because she wanted to, but she could not. I became neither, because neither did I want to, nor did I choose to be. But I was a very academic student. I excelled at school. And students like mine, who are super academic, usually conform they fit into that box of what a good student is supposed to be like. They think, act, feel that way. And their choices are also dictated by being that good student. I was a nerdy rebel. The amount of my rebellion was the same as my percentage in class 12, 94.3% rebel. And I liked it that way. I wanted to keep it that way. After I finished class 12, I had to answer, what do you want to do, Priya? And I had no idea. So at 17, because I had a love for literature, I decided to do honors in English literature. By that time, my family's circumstances had changed. I no longer had the liberty to pursue arts. I had chosen arts in class 11th and 12th, even though I had done really well in science. I still remember my mother's reaction to me saying, Mama, I want to choose arts. It was like an Ekta Kapoor serial mom. You could zoom into her face and she would go, Kya? 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 So I started doing my English honors degree when I was 17. And there's a funny story that I remember that when I was 27 years old, 3 years ago, I was a high school English teacher. And a student in Australia walked up to me and said, Miss, I'm 17 and I still don't know what I wanted to do. I looked at her straight in the eye and said, Melissa, I'm 27 and I still don't. While I was a high school teacher, I realized that I was trying really hard to once again fit into that one box of what a teacher is supposed to be like. Fortunately, I happened to go into a slam poetry competition. It was a district slam. And I told an angry poem on stage. And telling that angry poem on stage was way more enlightening than my anger has ever been. I did really well in it. And I realized that as a teacher, I could still be a spoken word poet. I didn't have to fit into that one box. I could make the boundaries of my own box fluid. And the only person who could do that was myself. It was during spoken word poetry that I decided that I want to start doing stand-up comedy. I realized I could be telling an angry poem about war on one stage, and on the same night go to another stage and talk about the atrocities that happen at the border and look at life through a sense of realism while being humorous at the same time. I realized that the only person who could move from one box to another was myself, and I did exactly that. How many of you here have watched Big Boss or Big Brother? It's okay. I won't judge you. I can't. A lot of intellectuals give me a lot of flack for having done Big Brother and Big Boss. Why? Because they want you to be that typical reality TV contestant. They have a box for it. That box where you're not supposed to have an opinion. A box where you're only supposed to do certain kind of work after you come out of that show. And I refuse to fit into that box because I haven't created it for myself. I did a lot of degrees in my life. After doing my English honors, I did a postgrad in applied linguistics. I did a master's in teaching, middle and secondary. I did an MEd by research, which was halfway through a PhD. And I realized that I was doing all of that just to accumulate degrees. I think we all confuse literacy with education. All of these degrees, I've got 4, they have only made me literate, not educated. Because education, I believe, is something really, really beyond the classroom. And that's exactly what I'm doing in my life right now. I'm educating myself. As I said, I've done a lot of jobs. In India, I worked as a call center agent. That's where it all started. I worked as a quality analyst. I worked as a tutor. I worked as a trainer. Then I went to Australia. I led my typical immigrant lifestyle. I started working as an appointment setter. I gave flyers to people walking past in a shopping center, which is why now I always stop and take them. I then became a high school teacher. And then I came back to India. Now I do a variety of things. I act, I write, I perform stand-up, I do spoken word poetry. I'm still a registered teacher. I do radio for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation every now and then while I live in Mumbai. I practice my fake accent every day. I'm an unapologetic feminist. I'm still a Big Brother and Big Boss contestant. I sometimes choose to fly business class. Sometimes I take shared autos, shared cabs. I do travel in the Mumbai local. I eat at the finest restaurants in Mumbai sometimes. At other times, I survive on a vada pav and a cutting chai. And a lot of people ask me why. It's because this professional fluidity is one thing. I want to give myself a lifestyle that is also not boxed anywhere. I want to offer myself a variety of lifestyle which is fluid, where I can move from one box to another. Because I can, and I choose to. With everything that I do right now in my life, the biggest dilemma that I face are these two boxes. There is one box that feeds my stomach. And then there is another box that feeds my soul. What's happening right now in my life is, and should happen in everybody's lives, is an effort to combine these two boxes. It's not always easy. You will not always do work that feeds your soul. You will not always do work that feeds your stomach. But as long as you're doing a bit of both, you're all right. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do in my life at the moment. I still fail at success. I still succeed at failure. But in doing so, there's one very particular thing. I don't let my success or my failure define me. I let it educate me. Because I think that is the most important thing that I've got in my life. As you must have realized by now, the story is super simple. I've not discovered radio. I've not redefined the principles of gravity. I've not suffered an extreme form of tragedy, merged into spiritual significance of any kind. It's just an average story, with a slightly not so average lesson in there. It's very cliche for people to tell you, stay out of the box. What I'm telling you here is, stay in the box. It's okay. But make sure that the door is open for you to choose other boxes if you need to. A close friend once told me, what would you do if you were not scared? And honest to God, I would do exactly what I'm doing in life at the moment. A very important lesson to remember, which I learned the hard way, was that I don't have to close one door in order to open the other. I didn't have to give up on being a school teacher in order to be a spoken word artist. I didn't have to give up on being a spoken word artist in order to fit that stereotype of a comedian. I didn't have to give up on being a teacher, a spoken word artist, and a comedian in order to be a column writer. I didn't have to give up all of those 4 boxes in order to do radio. And that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you here. Now when I look back and somebody asks my 10-year-old self, what do you want to be? My answer is everything.